Welcome back to the garden. My name is Syra. Today I'm going to be focusing on Uchiki Kuri winter squash. I'm going to share with you this harvest, lots of tips and info along the way. Also going to show you how I've interplanted this crop with blueberry bushes and just show you how everything turned out. Let's jump right in. So this is a Japanese variety bred from an orange Hubbard. It is in the Maxima species, Cucurbita maxima. So in Japanese, kuri means chestnut. That is the descriptive of the squash, nice and sweet and nutty. So they have a really nice thin and edible skin, but they do keep very well still. They mature quite quickly, anywhere from 80 to 100 days. So I started harvesting some at about 80 days. Typically they're around the 90-day mark, which is fairly quick. It does depend on, your growing degree days. So with this variety, you'll get anywhere from 2 to 6 fruits per vine. And if you go ahead and harvest some of the early maturing ones, that'll give your plants the opportunity to produce some later fruits as well. So there are 3 real common species out there: Pepo, Maxima, and Moschata. The Pepo include acorn delicata and a lot of the summer squashes like patty pan and zucchini, as well as some gourds and some specialty pumpkins. The Maxima would include buttercup, candy roaster, Hubbards, red Kuri, kabocha, and giant pumpkins. The Moschata would include all the butternuts, including honey nut, Seminole pumpkins, and giant pumpkins. So the way to tell the difference between orange kabocha and Uchiki Kuri is just the shape. The Kuri are more teardropped in appearance and the kabocha are more flattened. All right, so how to tell if your red Kuri squash is ready for harvest. The main indication I look for is the color of the neck here. If it's yellow to a beige and nice and corky looking and feeling, that is the biggest indication to me that it is pretty much ready to harvest. The sugar content in them is fairly high in general, so they do okay cutting them as soon as they're ready and not waiting for the vines to completely die back. There's also a fingernail test that you can do by pushing on the top part here in, and if it doesn't leave any mark, that's a good indication that your skin is thickened up a bit and could be harvested. I don't really like doing that technique. I don't really do that one because you can blemish your fruits. Visually, I think it's the easiest just by visual. I mean, you get a feeling for it all, of course, over time, but a nice rich color and that striping. So you want to cut them up high. I cut them pretty much flush right to the vine. So a good way to identify Cucurbita maxima species is by taking a look at the stem here. And if it looks like this, round dried piece of rope and kind of cork-like, very good chance that it is a maxima species, unlike say a butternut or zucchini that has that real edged angular stem. Oh darn, another rotten one. I think this is the 4th one from this patch here. Still just made really nice soup with the other 3. Didn't lose too much of them. So this season I grew my Kuri squash with blueberries. It's true that blueberries and squash do require a little bit different soil pH. The squash can actually grow okay as low as 5.5. Most blueberry varieties prefer anywhere from 4.2 to about 5.5. I did make holes for my squash, put some compost and some fertilizer and made a bit of a hole. These were 5 to 7-year-old transplanted blueberries last fall. I did use all my pathway decomposing wood chips, and then I added some peat moss as well. I just piled it all up on here. And I did actually let them crop out this season. Typically, you'd probably want to take off the flowers. They were looking really quite good this spring, so I decided to let them go. It may affect next year's crop. We'll see how it all turns out, but I just couldn't take the flowers off early on because the bees were loving them so much, and before I knew it, I just had a lot of blueberries, so it's been really abundant with blueberries this year. So the blueberry bushes really drew in the bees. They didn't need any extra flowers really. I did have actually tulips growing down here, but the squash did bloom at a different time than the blueberries. So I did plant some flowers to attract bees in here, some zinnias on the end. I also had some volunteer borage come up, and it's such an excellent flowering plant to grow with squash. I also planted some asters in here as well. Also have some white clover in the front here that the squash is kind of sprawling out onto. So squash really loves to grow up fence lines or over things, piles of brush, over blueberry plants, anything to kind of boast their flowers up a little bit higher so the bees can find them more easily. I really like doing a bit of a combination of trellising and sprawling on the ground. They both have a benefit and kind of a negative. I really love growing squash on trellises. However, with the trellises, it can be a little bit more risky if you have like vine borers, for instance. The whole plant is relying upon that main root growth. You know, a vine borer gets in there, you can kill the whole plant. Whereas if you have a sprawling squash plant, they tend to put out secondary root growth at each node. If we look down here, we can see an anchor root or secondary root, like a tap root going into the ground, helping feed this beautiful here. So that's one great advantage of just letting your vines sprawl out on the ground, or at least have some runners on the ground while others go up over various objects or trellises, is that you get more potential for the vines to establish more fruits and have the ability to tap into more nutrients. When they're laying directly on the earth, it's nice to turn them or put something underneath them. But I was just turning them a bit. So it's a little bit of a bleach side, but put some wood chips under there, or a board also works just to keep that moisture under control. You know, I've seen a lot of worms and beetles that kind of accumulate under there. Things can decompose a little bit and start to rot out your fruit very easily. So you can see here, this one is just barely lifted off the ground, kept it nice and pristine, except that some bird crap. But there's no bleach side on it now just because it was lifted just that little bit. Thank you, blueberry plant. So you can see here, I've got some new fruit development. That's definitely not going to make it. So what I'm going to do is cut this off back to about there. And that'll help this one develop further. Here's another immature one that I hope makes it. They go pretty quick. I've seen these develop like about 2 weeks. Sometimes the later ones actually develop faster, I find. So here you can see some that maybe they were pollinated, but they died off due to potentially too many fruits on the vine already. These are lifted a bit. You can see there's no anchor roots or secondary roots coming out here. They might have had a chance if they did have some secondary roots coming, but yeah, sometimes they just do that. They die back like that. Got a couple more right down here, ones that, you know, need probably a couple weeks. So there's still some pretty large berries on the back of the bed here. This is Blue Ray. I think this is my favorite so far. Really great flavor and really large. And a lot of the squashes are hanging just off the ground here. Some really beautiful ones. So you don't want to carry your fruits by the stem in case it snaps off. You want to keep that on there for storage. So all in all, this duo of blueberry and squash worked out very well for me. You know, I didn't see any deficiencies in the plants or anything. The blueberries were actually putting on new growth at the same time that they were cropping out this year. The squash was nice and vibrant and green and set a lot of fruit. So very pleased with this duo here. Kind of a little bit surprised. All right, thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you found the information useful and enjoyed the video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel, like and leave a comment in the comments below. Ask me a question. I love getting back to my viewers. We'll see you again real soon on the next one. So the next video I'm going to do is going to be all about butternut squash. Still have some growing with blueberries. Got a couple of towers here, and in the south end, got some vertical trellising, some hybrids. So keep an eye out for that video coming real soon. All right, catch you later.